I was recently reading an incredible article which said that Townsville could grow by as much as 50% in the next 3 years. Now, whether this happens or not, it's an extremely interesting city because it's getting massive amounts of infrastructure, population growth, and most importantly, it's had this incredible long-term history of performance, but done almost nothing since the last mining boom. Which is why in today's video, after studying the entire market and every single suburb up there across 30 key performance indicators, we wanted to bring 5 of the most undervalued suburbs to you if you're thinking about buying the Townsville market in the next 12 months.
Yeah, well, I recently got back from a trip up to Townsville and realized it's such a beautiful city, and we've identified 5 amazing suburbs, even though there's a few more that look really, really good on paper. But we'll start with one of the more affordable suburbs that we identified up there, you know, really close to the Townsville city, which is Mundingburra.
Now, one of the things that I love about this suburb and Townsville in general is it's got this beautiful long-term history of performance like all of Australia's major regional markets, but in the last 10 to 12 years since the mining boom ended in WA and Townsville, it really has done nothing. In fact, this particular suburb has only averaged 1.13% growth over the last 10 years. Now, when I look at the vacancy rate, it's sitting well below 1% right now, and the average house prices in the suburb are only $400K. Now, according to an article by Simon Presley, where he looked at over 400 cities and major regional and regional towns around Australia, Townsville has the highest weekly rental return, with this particular suburb getting over $450 a week in rent. On top of this, the DSR score is right in that sweet spot right now. It's 60 out of 100, which says to me that there's very, very strong demand at the moment, which we're feeling as buyers agents on the ground up there at the moment. But it hasn't resulted in runaway price growth like Perth or somewhere like that has experienced in the last few years.
Now, when driving through Mundingburra, you would notice that there's a lot of diversity between different pockets of this suburb. So you can't just look up that suburb and go buy any old property there. You really need to dive into the due diligence. And we find that good quality properties in this area are actually selling above that median house price, but quality over quantity is our method. Now, the next suburb is a bit of a newer suburb, but has real nice owner-occupier appeal when you drive through it, and is a little bit further away from the city and further away from the river and things like that. So you got more options there, which is Mount Louisa.
Yeah, so the 10-year growth rates in Mount Louisa have been extremely low at 1.18% per annum, and the vacancy rates are sitting at 1.16%, representing a chronic undersupply of property for rent in that suburb right now. The average house prices are still sitting well below $500K at the $450,000 mark, and rents are at that sweet spot of $500 a week. Now, same as all of these suburbs, that DSR score is in that perfect sweet spot. And one of the things that I was reading up on Townsville at the moment about is the $12 billion worth of infrastructure projects in pipeline or in completion right now.
Now, the next suburb is Hyde Park, which is essentially right next to the city in Townsville. So it's got a really great walk score. You can pretty much walk anywhere from Hyde Park, and it is a beautiful, leafy, Queenslander feeling type of suburb, and the 10-year capital growth rates in this area have only been 1.48%, so chronically below their longer term averages. You've got a vacancy rate sitting there at 1.06, so just like all of these suburbs that we're talking about, extremely low vacancy rates. Now, according to CoreLogic, the median house price currently sits at $420,000, with the median rent being $395 per week. So I think with this suburb, it is a little bit more of an affluent area, so that's why you're not seeing as strong a rental yield compared to some of the other suburbs that we're talking about. And Hyde Park's DSR score is currently sitting at 56%, once again, right in the sweet spot.
Now, the next suburb, which we absolutely love and is one of the nicest and most affluent in all of Townsville, is Adalia. Now, this suburb is really only about a 10-minute drive to the city and the beach, and has some of the most beautiful homes in all of Townsville, and is super, super livable. So you can pick up a house in this suburb. Average is around about that $560K mark, with many of them, like Simon mentioned before, selling well above that in the better streets and better pockets. The 10-year growth rate has still been well below 2%, with the vacancy rate sitting below 1.5%. And this is a suburb where mums and dads and locals love living at the moment.
And just around the corner from Idalia, you have my personal favourite suburb in Townsville, Annandale. The reason I love it so much is you have access to so much infrastructure and so many amenities within walking distance or a really short drive. Now this area has seen a higher annual capital growth rate compared to all of the other suburbs, being at 2.1%, but well worth it in my opinion, and still chronically below the longer term averages. Now, vacancy rates are the lowest out of all of these suburbs, sitting at 0.64% currently. So you can barely find a rental if you are a tenant up there at the moment. And those renters are generally paying around $500, $512 per week, according to the median rent at the moment. And the average house price sitting just below $530,000. But good luck trying to find a good house in Annandale for around that price. They are selling closer to sort of $600,000 in the current market, because the DSC score in this suburb is actually the highest of the 5, sitting at 63%. So there is more demand in Annandale.
Now, the reason we're talking about Townsville today is we've just looked at over 8,000 suburbs across 19 of Australia's largest capital city and major regional markets. Now, Townsville, I think, sits at number 14 at the moment in terms of population. It is booming from a population growth perspective. It's starting to get more and more speculation from investors. It is chronically undersupplied from a property perspective right now. Massive amounts of infrastructure are going in. It has had a really, really strong 100 years, but the last 12 to sort of 13 years have been very, very average up there, and it is coming off the bottom at the moment. So it's kind of like buying Perth, Brisbane or Adelaide maybe 5 or 6 years ago. You'd be really looking to get into that market at the bottom at the moment as it starts to turn. And according to Simon Priestley, it could grow by as much as 50% over the coming 3 years. So we're super excited about these suburbs and many of the others in this market, and looking forward to bringing you more information about Townsville in coming videos. If you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 6 months, then the team and I at Pumped On Property would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. To book the session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that free strategy session button. Now, in the session, we'll talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and educate you deeply on the Australian property market. You can then take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each month. Either way, we look forward to continuing to help you build your property portfolio with confidence on your journey to financial freedom. I was just watching you do that, eh? You know the Fatty Borton, how he used to shake his head like, you do that funny face. You were doing that as your... Yeah.
Don't say it, Simon. Yes, say it.
That's what he must have been doing on camera, so.